Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Dennis Cook. I'm a planning consultant to the city. I work with your staff quite often. Brian Millar, your acting director, would be here tonight, but he was unable to come, so he asked me to fill in for him. The project before us tonight is a general plan amendment and a rezone. There was also originally a subdivision map, but the Planning Commission approved that contingent upon council action tonight of approving the general plan and rezoning. If you choose not to approve the project, the subdivision, of course, dies also. The site, it's a 5.73 acre site located on the north side of Bridge Street, almost midway between Tharp Road and Walton Avenue, just to the east there. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Just to the, get used to this, it's touchy. Just to the east is the Golden Pacific Bank. Hilber's new construction company and yard is in the back of the property, and the residential properties along the west side. Along the right side of the screen here is the property that we're talking about. This is a wide angle or a pano of the Bridge Street, and you see the single family residential uses across the street, kind of ranch style houses. And then along the west side of the property, you see the fences that the houses, some newer houses back out to the property, and then you can see the extension, the sidewalks along Bridge Street with the wall and landscaping. And then along the west side and then the rear of the property is some light industrial, heavy commercial type property where Hilber's has a lot of their equipment stored, and then the houses along the west side. Bridge Street, just the curb and gutter is in on Bridge Street. It's pretty finished, and then the sidewalks will be added, and you can see the bank building right next to the property. The existing general plan, the property split. The north half of the property is business technology, light industry, kind of matches the property just to the north. And then the south half of the property is office and office park property. For the amendment to the general plan, it will change most of the property. This will be low density residential, which is single family homes, so back up to these houses. The middle part will be a medium density residential, which are typically duplexes, a mobile home park, things like that. In this particular case, it'd probably be duplexes. And then there's a 1.27 acre piece, I believe, that's for multifamily development, apartments. And then this corner, 0.6 acre, will stay as office commercial as it is right now. And then the zoning matches that. The top half of the property will be commercial, heavy commercial, light industrial designation, and then the office on the south end will change over to mostly residential with the remaining office piece. This is the subdivision map. Something didn't come out too good on this slide. It's a bit, I don't know what happened, but I'll show it the best I can. The subdivision, this is Bridge Street right here, and the subdivision is this. Oh, it's upside down. Huh. Didn't show up that way on my screen. Anyway, this is Bridge Street right here. Oh, that's a mess. Along the west side will be single family residential. The interior part would be duplexes. The northeast part would be apartments, and the remaining office commercial piece. Again, that's not before you tonight, but we just want to give you a sample of what it will be. When we looked at the project, there were no significant impacts found. The changing the general plan from like heavy commercial, light industrial to mostly residential really doesn't significantly increase the traffic that would be generated if the property is built out either way. The only real kind of issue is incompatibility. You got light industrial uses in back of what will be people's backyards. The city ordinance, though, compensates for that somewhat, and they're required to put in a 6-foot masonry wall and a hedge in to help with the visual characteristics that could be a problem. So the Planning Commission, they heard this, they had a public hearing, and they concluded, they recommended the City Council adopt the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation measures that was prepared for the project, approve the general plan amendment, and to approve the rezoning that goes with it. Yep. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Through the mayor. I've looked through the entire plan, so it's quite interesting. I like the design. I like the whole idea. It sounds like a very productive opportunity for us. And I live on the other side of that area, so I'm extremely familiar with that little area. I tend to walk it when I can. And one of the questions that I have is on the traffic. What year was the traffic generation report that was utilized? Because in the report, in the Planning Commission report, it sounded like it was 2004, and since then there's been a tremendous amount of growth since 2004, if I'm incorrect on that year.
The 2004 is reference to when the general plan was adopted and the traffic study that was done for that. The traffic information in the staff report, that little study, was done for this project recently. And
It wasn't clear on the report to me. Can you let me know what year that was done?
it was just done 6 months ago,
6 months ago?
maybe 4 months ago, pretty recent.
And so, because I've seen the traffic backup from River Valley High School all the way around to on the other side. So in looking at the report, it doesn't seem like there's a concern with the additional traffic. So that's where it wasn't clear to me. Because I've seen the traffic. So.
Yeah, what we analyzed was if that property was developed under the existing general plan, mostly commercial type stuff, versus developing it as residential, the amount of traffic generated would not be significantly different. It doesn't mean there won't be more traffic, just the change isn't too much.
Right, there's peaks and valleys to that time frame.
Yes, the peak hours are,
Right.
of course, the worst hours.
Okay, so the peak hours are within that morning and then late afternoon, mid-afternoon.
The peak AM is usually 7 to 8, and the PM is 5 to 6.
Okay.
Weekdays.
So then the road is pretty rough, Bridge Street. That's the one that I'm talking about. So both sides, the entire road's going to be completely worked on, or?
I don't believe so. Ben, do you want to ask Ben to come up, our public works person? He can answer that in more detail.
So what you have before you tonight is regarding the general plan amendment and the rezone to the property. And the tentative map was taken to the Planning Commission in late July, I believe. And so with that tentative map, there's conditions for the improvement plans to be submitted. And then we'll work through some of these particulars regarding the exact improvements and where those cuts and where the lane lines and how the traffic marking will be adjusted on Bridge Street.
Okay.
But a developer, typically in Yuba City, the way we're set up is the developer is responsible to improve the property along their frontage.
Okay.
And with Bridge Street being one of your impact fee roads, we collect fees through the impact fees when you develop. Every time a property owner pays impact fee for their house, we'll collect a portion of that fee for some of those improvements on Bridge Street later on. But so no, there won't be required to widen the south side,
Okay.
if that clarifies.
The Tharp Bridge, Walton, that area right there, just that stretch, it seems the road is just really in poor condition, tons of traffic, concern when those peaks are high, and there is no sidewalk on the residential ranchette-style homes that you're speaking of. So what is the commitment by the city to take care of that? And as I looked in the Planning Commission notes, it described the widening of Bridge Street, and then it talked about that the developer is responsible for all improvements and public improvements on the road. So I just would like more clarity about that.
So the property owner is responsible to improve their frontage.
So that's half of the street.
That's half of the street.
I just want that in clear language for me.
Correct.
Okay.
And so, should the city decide to prioritize the widening of the south half or further to the west, then the city would need to utilize our impact fee dollars and leverage that with the property owner's development.
So council, if you have,
So right now, with the maintenance of that, it is definitely duly noted. I drove through there just this weekend, and there's a lot of potholes. It's time to get out there and do some maintenance as we move around. But that would not be a part of this developer's responsibility to maintain that.
okay, so, but it would be a responsibility of the city, I would think, because of all that
Correct.
traffic, and there's the turning, and then part of that would be the impact in the construction period. Also with additional traffic. I'm just hyper aware because I live in the area.
So with the general plan 2004, it did a study of the traffic at build out with that site being built. And so the difference between that traffic that would have generated with the current zoning, which is the commercial and heavy industrial, if I'm saying this wrong, there's not a significant difference between that traffic as proposed. So I don't know if that helps clarify there.
I
But
know.
yes, ultimately, the south half of the road, the city is responsible to maintain that.
And I'm not trying to be unfair to you, Ben, and I understand what you're saying. It's the fact that the reporting seems to be well written in the reports, but when you're living in it, when you're stuck in traffic and you have tons of cars behind you and you're seeing kids and racing happening, and you see elderly people walking on non-paved sidewalks, and these cars are going 35, 40, 45, that concerns me as just a safety issue for that neighborhood area. So I'm bringing these concerns forward because I'm hoping that we could consider as a city adding a sidewalk to the other side where it is not potentially responsible part for the developer, but that would mean possibly some of those impact fees being redirected to that and fixing that road. Those are my comments.
Correct. There's also a big thing. I want to note that ultimately Bridge Street's going to extend west, where right now it's shut off
Right.
to Harding. I think it's Harding?
Hardy,
And
yes.
so that does impact the network on how things move around. And when that development, at some point in the future, that will make a connection and open up some of that traffic flow.
Right. But it'll continue to be the way it is as it is. Correct.
Through the mayor. First of all, I like the project because we need more growth. This is one thing that we've talked about since we started this council in its current configuration last December. We need growth, and we know we need housing. I think it's a good project. So really, two questions, and Ben, it's going to go back to you for one of these. First one is, if we approve all of this, and it's already been through the planning commission, how far out are we from being shovel ready for this development potentially?
I believe the developer's here tonight. He'll have to answer that. If this is approved, the map runs for 2 years, and they can get extensions longer than that. It's up to them when they choose to build.
Yeah. Do we have a idea of how soon you want the project to go through? I like that answer. So, because the reason I ask that is because we've had projects that was been before the council, been before planning, and then 5 years later, we're still dealing with another extension and another extension and another extension, and we know we need housing. Ben, to the second part of that is, I agree with my fellow council member. I know that road very well, and I realize where the funds have to come from. What's the likelihood of that section of road, because it's full of potholes, we know it's a mess, with a development going in, once the development is done, how difficult will it be for us to start prioritizing that up on our list to smooth out that road to where it makes it a little safer, so you're not beating your car to death or getting moved around with potholes, and then secondly, to make it more attractive for the development?
So this is where our $7 million need versus our $1 million programming comes into play, but definitely when I drove through it on Saturday, there's an option. There's definitely an option where we could put at least fill the potholes and do a slurry seal and a surface restoration like we're doing out here. When you get into sidewalks and curb gutter drainage, it gets really cumbersome because now you're reconstructing the road to get that drainage facility. You're looking at right of way. You got the utility poles on that south side and different driveway impacts, and so it's a snowball effect for when you start doing the drainage and the sidewalk. But it's something we could look into for adding. So at least it doesn't have this weird unmaintained strip down the middle. We could surface treat it where it's all together and put new striping on it.
Thank you.
Through the mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on Councilmember Espindola's comments, we just did a quick check and we determined that she is pretty darn close to that 500-foot restricted area. And as such, I just recommended to her that she recuse herself, and I believe she is going to do that. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. More comment up here? All right, I'm going to open this up to public comment, public hearing. If anybody cares for anything, step on up and please state your name, sir. Both of you, apparently.
I'm Bob Amaral. I live at 6368 South Township, which is in the county, but I'm here representing Sunsweet. I'm the vice chairman of the board of Sunsweet. And as you know, we had you guys over, had an interesting conversation about the relationship between Sunsweet and the city. And I'm not here to speak for or against the project at all. What I've come to ask is that you should possibly consider some kind of a, like in the county, if you're going to build a house in the county, you have to sign a piece of paper saying you understand that you're in the county, there's going to be dust, there's going to be noise, and there's going to be smells or whatever is involved with farming. And because of the proximity, if you can go back to the map, but everybody knows where Sunsweet is, we're really, really close. And so there is sound, there is smell, okay? And so I'm just asking you to consider that if you put this forward, to let the people know that may possibly buy into this, that this is the situation that they're going to live with. We're all about having a harmonious relationship with the city, and we don't want down the road some calls saying, hey, look, this place stinks, or this place makes a lot of noise. I mean, yeah, we do. I mean, it is what it is. That's why I came. So I would ask you to consider some kind of a device that warning's not is the wrong word, just advising folks of where they're going to live and the relationship to the manufacturing facility. Thank you.
Through the mayor, in response to Mr. Amarel's, I know that when the city developed its wastewater treatment plant in the south, there was a lot of confusion down there, and ultimately, I think maybe Diana's in the room. Do we notify residents, or is the real estate people, do they notify those folks, right? So this would be in line with Mr. Amarel's request. I think it makes sense, Mr. Amarel, what you're asking.
It does too. Way to get in front of it.
Often what we do for subdivisions that are located, for instance, next to agricultural land, we make sure that there's a condition in there that the realtors notify the prospective buyers of the proximity of agricultural use. This would be very similar to that. And, the developer would have to agree to add that to the project, but it is something that's in line with what we've done with past practice.
Thank you.
I'm told that at the planning commission meeting that they did add a condition that new property owners be notified of nearby industrial uses.
Perfect.
It's been taken care of.
Thank you, Dennis.
All right, good.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Probably a question for Bob, for yourself, and Dennis, just in case you have to answer. We already have existing homes there. that has been there for 10 years. Is Sunsweet having any issues with the homes that this property is going to be adjacent to? And I would ask you to answer from the mic if you could give a response.
To my knowledge, there's been no problems. And only reason I'm here is just so we can stay on that same course.
Right. No, and I appreciate it. While I'm nowhere near close living within the 500 feet, my office that I work out of is just the other side of Lowe's. And you guys are great neighbors. I mean, even at the height, I don't hear the trucks. I very seldom hear the plant, the smells. I mean, there's not an issue. And when you approached, first thing that came to my mind is, do we have a problem that we just didn't know about? But I don't foresee a problem, but as long as we disclose it, I still think it's all good.
I'm sure Mr. Bumgarner can smell it on a fairly regular basis. So anyway.
As long as you guys are going to stay in town, I'm okay with the smell, Mr. Amaral.
Well, I mean, and I think that speaks to the harmonious relationship that we have. And we just want to, as we go back to that meeting we had, that's kind of, unless we're more or less being asked to leave, we have no intention.
Right. No, thank you.
All right, George.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. My name is George Musalam. I'm with North Valley Engineering and Surveying in Yuba City. We're the engineers on the project. We thank you for your consideration, and we're in agreement with all the mitigation measures and staff's recommendation. And we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Nope, we're good. Any other member of the public care to comment? All right, we'll go ahead and close the hearing. And we'll bring it back to council. We have 3 items for consideration, A, B, and C.
Make a motion, through the mayor, make a motion to adopt staff's recommendations A, B, and C
All right.
regarding this project.
I'll second that motion.
All right, have a motion and a second to approve staff's recommendation. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? None. Perform recusal. Good job. We can get,
And Mr. Mayor, if we could let the record reflect that the councilwoman is back in the chambers.
very good.